Good morning. We are nearly 3 weeks post-mask mandate in the Scottsdale Unified School District. So I wanted to show you a bit of data. But first, I want to start out with the celebration by Board President Jan Michael Greenberg. This was posted on his Facebook page a couple days ago, but he says, great news. As of Friday, the number of active COVID cases on our campuses dropped from 167 last week to 64 this week. This is the lowest number since the end of the first week of school last month. As a result of the mask requirement and fewer cases, the number of students required to quarantine dropped by 75% from the prior week. This means more of our students have been able to remain in school learning and participating in extracurricular activities. Now, this is a little bit deceiving. It's not a little bit deceiving, it's very deceiving in that there are less kids in quarantine because Scottsdale Unified School District changed their quarantine requirements when they mandated masks. So let's be clear that the wearing of masks did not just decrease cases and quarantine cases. It was put into place at the same time that they changed the rules. So prior to the mask mandate, anyone sitting within 6 feet of a positive COVID case was required to quarantine for 10 days. That changed. So now that the mask mandate is back into effect, if you are sitting within close contact, you are not required to quarantine. So let's take a look at, this is a little bit, we're going to look at a neighboring school district, Mesa. Mesa is the largest school district in Arizona. It is roughly 3 times the size of Scottsdale Unified School District. In Scottsdale, we have close to 25,000 staff and students, and in Mesa, they are roughly 65,000. So not only is Mesa the largest school district in the state, but they have also chosen to remain mask optional. So this is important. Let's look at how their data looks compared to ours, where we mandated masks. I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me as I adjust. Okay. So here we have, this is the percent positivity of students and faculty. The blue bars represent Scottsdale, the orange bar is Mesa. Now Mesa does not do, they don't report on their website historical data. So we are looking at a snapshot in time. I pulled this yesterday and it's represented, the blue represents the weekly data that Scottsdale Unified posts on their website. So you can see first couple weeks of school, the cases were increasing. Now that is also in line with the Delta variant. And if you will recall from the meeting on August 17th, Dr. Scott Menzel did say that based on his conversations with the Maricopa County Department of Health, that the Delta variant was expected to peak and then decline. And we were going to see that in the overall community. So this in between week 3 and 4 is where the mask mandate came into play. Now, I'm going to try to get Mesa historical data so that I can plot this and show the trend and show if there's any variances here or if it moves along the same line. But look here, the percent of positivity is really close. So we instituted a mask mandate. Mesa did not, and their cases are almost identical. So because we don't have historical data, I also wanted to look at the school year-to-date cases between the 2 school districts. So almost identical here. Year-to-date, Scottsdale has 1.82% of its 25,000 staff and students having positive cases versus Mesa 1.88%. So this is also in line, as I said, Scott Menzel said that we expect the Delta variant in the community to peak and then decline. Here we have the Maricopa County data. You can see here that it starts to peak. It peaks at about August 21st, 24th, something like that, and then declines. This is very similar to what we're seeing in our classrooms. Now, it's interesting to note that there is no mask requirement in the overall community. So why are we having a decline if masks are not mandated in stores, in restaurants, and other areas? So this is an important distinction to make. The Scottsdale Unified School District is claiming causation when this is probably just correlation, meaning the data points seem to move together, but the mask mandate, they are calling it a cause of the decline when it's really correlated to the overall decline in the community where there's not a mask mandate. So one of the other things that Scott Menzel said in that mask mandate meeting in order to encourage the vote to mask mandates was that there was a critical situation with our hospitals, and that while most students or most children are not severely impacted by COVID and are hospitalized, that there was a critical situation in our local hospitals where they were out of pediatric beds, and that pediatric beds were at capacity, and that I'm going to paraphrase here, but he said you cannot take a little person and put them in a big person's bed. This was anecdotal. There was no source given for that. I feel like it was a bit of a scare tactic used to encourage a vote to put masks into our classrooms. But if that's going to be used as a data point to get a vote for a mask mandate, then they need to show that information. They need to share that source. That is not anything that we've heard from our community members who have who work in hospitals or have spouses who work in hospitals. I would challenge you to call any hospital and ask if they are at capacity and if they are turning sick children away because they don't have pediatric beds. Perhaps he was speaking about one location of a more prominent hospital in our area, but he didn't provide that detail. It was anecdotal, and it's a shame that our school board voted 4-1 based on anecdotal data, but that's where we are. So the takeaways from the data that we have right now, as I said, I'm going to try to get some historical data from Mesa so that we can evaluate those trends. As we saw in the community, the Delta variant is, it's consistent, the trend is consistent, and we were always going to see cases decline. So this claim that the mask mandate allowed more students to stay in class is misleading. The only thing that the mask did was allow SUSD to change their quarantine. Not allow, but it's what they did. And I want to point out that Mesa remained mask optional, and they do not quarantine healthy children, even if they've been exposed, even if they were exposed without wearing a mask. The Mesa School District is notifying of close contact and telling parents to monitor for symptoms, but they are not requiring close contact quarantines of healthy students. So the Scottsdale Unified School District is hiding behind the Maricopa County Department of Health and saying, again, I'm going to paraphrase Scott Menzel, and he says that these are not our guidelines. We have an obligation to follow the Maricopa County Department of Health. So I find this very interesting that Mesa, the largest school district in the state, is applying those recommendations differently. So I want to point out here that the interpretation and the application of those recommendations is not consistent, and Scottsdale Unified School District is saying that they are following those recommendations. However, we have a neighboring school district who is doing something very differently and doing a much more common sense approach to masking, making them optional, and not quarantining healthy students, the case rates are nearly identical. Despite very different applications, the case rates are nearly identical. So why does this matter? It matters because during that board meeting, data was presented, flimsy data points were picked out and used strategically in order to get that vote, while other data points were left out. So I would call this selective disclosure and selective omittance of data. And why our school board members allowed this to happen is very concerning. They did not ask the questions. I mean, Patty Beckman did try to ask, what's the trigger to allow us to go back to masks optional? She asked Dr. Menzel at least 3 times, and he didn't provide an answer, yet they still voted to give him the power to pick and choose when we have to wear masks. So this is important because we are coming up on the 9/29 date, and it is yet to be determined if the mask mandate and the vaccine mandate bill will be upheld. If it is not upheld, the power lies within the Scottsdale Unified School District, and particularly and specifically in the hands of Dr. Menzel to mask our children. And the next decision is going to be vaccines. So I want to show you an email dated August 15th, where Dr. Menzel reaches out to Dr. Sunshine to discuss the issue of a mask mandate as well as a vaccine mandate. We have to ask ourselves, like, it's a slippery slope. They gave him the power to pick and choose and look at certain data points and mandate masks, and they voted to do that. Will they do the same with vaccines? And we have seen Jan Michael Greenberg in December of last year post on social media that he believes in a vaccine mandate. So I want to ask you this: do you want the Scottsdale Unified School District, the 27-year-old governing board president, and Scott Menzel, who is a PhD, not a medical doctor, do you want them making decisions and mandating vaccines for your students? You have to decide. Again, I'm going to go back and look and try to get Mesa data. I'm going to try to follow this and update this weekly, but the data is clear. This is a correlation, not a causation. Mesa did something very different in terms of their masking. Masks remain optional, and quarantining of students is not a requirement for close contact exposures. So make sure you send your emails. Today is the last day, by the way, I believe is the last day in order for you to encourage a board member to put up a vote for a new board president. So I would encourage you to send those emails today. And with that, it's a wrap. Take care.